Hey, what's up? How you doing? It's your friend Phil, Project Management Trainer and Coach. Welcome to 40 Days to PMP and CAPM Exam Success. Well, it's getting a little bit warmer in Arizona. Let's get some fresh air in here. So today we're talking about time management. Time management, we've been on time management for a while now. And the process for today is develop schedule. Getting to develop schedule only happens after you go through defining the activities, sequencing the activities, estimating activity resources, and estimating the activity durations. Now, by the time you get here, you first of all, know the activities, define activities. Then you know the order in which the activities should occur to get the biggest bang for your buck, to optimize the schedule, right? And we call that sequencing the activities. You know the order in which the tasks must occur. You know that Phil is already working on 5 tasks in DC. Why don't you just roll in the other 5 if possible? Sequence the activities in a logical fashion to get the biggest payoff, right? Then you estimate the activity resources. When you know the resources at hand and you've got an idea of the sequence going back and forth, then you move into estimating the durations. Based on the great resources you have, you can then estimate how long a task will take. When you have all of this information, this is where you weave this huge tapestry of interaction into a final schedule. And that's what develop schedule is all about. Develop schedule has so many inputs that we're not even going to go into all of those, but I've run through the processes leading up to it. So that should give you an idea of what goes into developing the schedule. But I'm going to touch a little bit on the tools and techniques for developing the schedule. If you can think about what exactly happens in developing the schedule, it would make sense why you have certain inputs. Someone on the road who isn't paying attention to the schedule. Have a small window of time. You can't cross the road willy-nilly, right? So I had to use my horn. Anyway, for develop schedule, tools and techniques I would really like you to take notice of. First thing is schedule network analysis. You have to analyze your network to be able to optimize it. So analyze your network diagram. We also have 2 that sound alike: critical path and critical chain method. Know the difference. Critical path is all about being able to analyze that network diagram to determine the longest path and the shortest time in which you can complete the project. Longest path, shortest time. Okay? It's not the longest time, it's the longest path. I would highly advise you to read up this definition more till it makes sense, till it sinks in. I've talked about this in a few other videos. Now, the critical chain is the resource-constrained critical path. It sensitizes you to think about those resource constraints. Okay? And as a result of the resource constraints, we factor that in to our schedule and we put buffers in there. Now, for the critical chain, read the definition. But the buffers that you need to think about are called feed-in buffers and project buffers. And of course, these are duration buffers, right? They are non-work scheduled activities. So think about it. Think about them as buffers that you create to cushion your schedule from slippage. We use these especially where we have different tasks feeding into the critical path. So task X feeds into the critical path. So does task Y and Z. What do you need to do? Create a buffer to cushion the schedule from slippage, where resources are changing hands and there is increased risk in these areas. Okay, that's really what the critical chain is all about. Again, I've got videos on this and on my Facebook page as well, or on the Praizion Facebook page. But do you know what? This 40 days to PMP exam success is not meant to replace a wholesome 35 contact hour course. So if a lot of what I'm sharing now still sounds a little bit out there for you, I would advise that you sign up for our course. Go to www.praizion.com and go through a full wholesome 35 contact hour course. It only starts at $75 for a week. Why won't you do it? Don't take your exam without going through a wholesome 35 contact hour course. I highly advise you to, okay? But that's beside. Let's talk about a few other tools and techniques. Resource optimization, resource smoothing, and resource leveling. I hope you have read those. What are the differences between these? Which of these will change the critical path and which of these does not? Do you know the answer to that? So the critical path could be altered in resource leveling. Resource smoothing is different. Also, I would like you to read up about modeling techniques. You know, think about what if scenario analysis, and also think about the Monte Carlo simulation. Good for you to know what these things are actually all about. You know, again, I can't go into all of this here. Leads and lags. What is a lead? Deliberately starting an activity earlier. What is a lag? Deliberately delaying an activity. This is intentional. This is not to be confused with slack or float. If you do not know the difference between leads, lag, slack, and float, crack open the PMBOK Guide and unravel it. Two other tools and techniques I would like you to be aware of: schedule compression and scheduling tools. What do you mean by schedule compression? Two types of scheduling compression that you should be aware of, and they are, do you remember what they are? I hope you do, because if at this stage you have been through your 35 contact hour course, it should be at your fingertips. Fast tracking and crashing. Okay. Which of these looks to change or modify how things occur to get bigger bang for your buck in the schedule, thinking predominantly about the biggest bang for your buck? You know, smallest cost, biggest payoff, smallest cost. Which one comes to mind? Is it crashing or is it fast tracking? Should be crashing. What are examples of crashing? Examples of crashing are adding more resources, and this could be human, equipment, or material. Getting people to work overtime, right? So there is some type of money that will be involved in getting you the payoff, but you don't want to go over the top. You want to minimize it. Remember the saying, too many cooks spoil the broth. You also don't want to add too many people to a task, because it could add confusion, and of course it could add risk. Fast tracking is getting your schedule shortened by doing certain tasks in parallel. Now, to get the biggest payoff for this, they should be critical path activities. So if you run critical path activities in parallel, there's overlap. And as a result of the overlap, there's added risk. But there is also, in most instances, going to be a shortening of the schedule. You want to shorten the schedule. You don't want to do it with an intention of doing it for doing sake. There has to be an effect, which is to shorten the schedule, to compress the schedule. That's why we refer to all of this stuff as schedule compression. We're trying to compress it, make it shorter for reasons best known to the PM. You know, maybe they need to take advantage of market conditions or something like that, okay? But anyway, the summary of developed schedule is putting the entire schedule together to ensure that the team knows what to do and when. I will say, though, that control schedule, the process that we will be talking about, a little bit in the future, because we're going through planning. But when we get to controlling, we'll also talk about control schedule. And in control schedule, we have very similar tools and techniques. There's so many that are similar. We talk about resource optimization. We talk about leads and lags. There are quite a few things that are similar. But we won't talk about control schedule until we get to the monitoring and controlling process group. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for your audience. Speak to you soon.